Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for the long-awaited transfer talk that I've been promising for about 2 weeks. I think myself, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell to discuss all things transfer window and Aston Villa. Before we get into it, a special word for Luke Roper, who continue to sponsor our shows. If you use the code TVV20, you'll get 20% off everything that Luke Roper has to offer, and there is some lovely clobber in there. So if you've got the means, go and treat yourself. It helps the channel, and you get 20% off, which is always nice. Jacob, how are you?
Yeah, doing very well, thank you. Obviously, feels like the first proper week back of actual work and getting into the swing of things, and it's been a very busy week.
Okay, good, busy bit, and we think it's going to be a busy window for Aston Villa as well, as we've alluded to in the title. Should say, obviously, there is a game tonight. We're not going to talk about the game because Dave Reid and myself have already done that in the match preview. So go and read about. No, don't go and read about it. Go and watch that show that Dave and I did a few days ago, previewing tonight's game against West Ham. Of course, the 150th anniversary game and the 151st year, as I keep saying. But Jacob, we're here today to talk about transfers, and you said. It was kind of a throwaway comment from you, but I picked up on it and I've remembered. You said last time we spoke live, our Villa will get 2 or 3 in. Is that still the case? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think Villa's plans, like they have been in the last 2 windows, really are quite up in the air because PSR's a factor, and there's a lot of manoeuvring, isn't there? Like, for example, 3 weeks ago, someone said that Jayden Philogene would leave on a permanent deal. I think even Villa would have been surprised, but hopefully once it's announced, I can put the piece out on why it's happened. So I can't reveal too much, but obviously Villa have to find ways of easing the PSR burden and shape-shifting the squad to however he wants it. So, but the plan was always 2, I think, and the third would be if something exceptional happens. But it's been a very busy time, and there's been a lot of speculation and rumours, which do take up quite a lot of time. They consume a lot of my day, and a lot of them are very inaccurate.
Okay, yeah, there's always a lot of rubbish that floats around in these times. I hear it from you, I hear it from Greg, I hear it at Sky, at TalkSport. Like, so much gets floated around. Some of it does have substance, and something can have substance and then not happen. That doesn't mean people have got things wrong. Obviously, I've definitely had that happen to me a few times on social media, not mentioning any names, Jack Butland. But there is also a lot of guff that floats around that's completely fabricated, pure fabrication that gets made up. So it makes your job pretty difficult. You just spoke about Jayden Philogene or Philogene Bidace. I can't remember what he likes to be called nowadays. It keeps changing, doesn't it? So bit of a shock. I thought he'd go on loan. I know you can't talk about it fully, the reasons why, but 21 million or 20 million to Ipswich now looks like it's probably going to happen. And in fairness, I think that's a great move for him because I think that's the step he should have taken when he left Hull in the summer. I think he's missed a step in his career. Playing Premier League football for a great club like Ipswich under a great manager, you'll get football. You're not going to get the consistency at Villa because you're not going to play every week. It's a good move for him, and at this time, because it doesn't seem like Emery trusts him at the moment, it does feel like a good move for Villa as well.
Yeah,
so I think obviously you've said you can't say too much, but just say what you can around it.
I think we said in the summer that I felt that it was a big step up for Philogene. I thought Ipswich would have been a perfect bridge to then go into Villa. He's kind of done it the opposite way around, which probably doesn't work well for him. I think at the time it was quite surprising he went back to Villa anyway. I know we did a podcast and I said I'd be surprised that if he joined Villa, and I still stand by that. I think there's a lot of surprise because he obviously Villa had a buyback and matching clause, and that meant they were always in the driving seat. But Philogene wasn't too enamoured by coming back in the first place. But it was just after conversation with Emery and conversations about game time and a pathway, and the fact that Villa were playing Champions League, which I think ultimately convinced him. But going to a West Ham or Crystal Palace were also linked. London appealed, or an Ipswich would have been the perfect scenario. And it just feels such a shame that the guy we saw in the Championship with everything he used to do, extroverted on the pitch, we've not really seen him do anything in terms of actually taking the player on or any standout moments. Yes, we talk about the Bayern Munich game, but we mainly talk about him just tracking Alphonso Davies. We don't talk about anything on the ball, and that is him, kind of playing within himself. And I don't think he feels like he's got the responsibility that he had at Hull last year, and that's what made him really good and confident.
The other thing is, in his defence, I mean, I've been seriously underwhelmed by him. Lee, who sits next to me, knows that I'm quite tame during games, but for some reason, Philogene has really, really frustrated me. I expected more from him. I was excited about that. So I know I said he missed a step, but he was still an exciting wide player in the Championship. People make the step up from the Championship to the Premier League, and some of the games he's played, I've just expected more when I have seen him, but I will defend him on. I get it's hard when you're not playing every week, you're not getting consistent minutes. It's very hard to come in and out. And in his defence as well, if we're looking for balance, his best football for Hull was on the left. Villa have tried to play him in a different position. You could argue that's not suited him.
Yeah, but at the same time, he did play some football at Hull on the right, and the left, as we always knew, that was going to be, there's a lot of good options on the left. Bendia, Ramsey, McGinn, Rodgers, etc. It was always going to be there on the right. He was the second alternative really to Leon Bailey in terms of a wide player that can hug the touchdown, and he can do it. I just don't think he's been quick enough, or the style necessarily suits him. As we said before, he reminds me of a Jadon Sancho in terms of he's not got the electric speed where he can knock it and run. He's best combining, in combinations, in triangles, etc. out wide, and that's how he gets his best work. And I don't think Villa play that way. He needs to be a 1v1, more pacey, a bit like what Leon Bailey is at his best. And I just think there's a load of factors that have contributed to this, but ultimately Philogene I don't think has done enough really to prove himself. And although it's ruthless, and Emery would prefer to keep him and just send him out alone, I think Villa know that right now he's not what they need.
Okay, again, I know you can't go into too much detail, and you're waiting for it to happen to release some information on the Athletic, of course, which we'll all watch out for. Have you got a kind of timeline in mind for when this might be finalised?
I think it could be today or tomorrow, really. The medicals medicals done yesterday morning, so I haven't heard anything since, but you'd assume that it would tend to be next 24, 48 hours, really. And also, given the commercial factors that play in Premier League, whenever Ipswich think is the best time to put it out and get us maximum exposure.
Okay. Hello to the 443 people that are watching us across all platforms at the moment, in particular the two on Facebook. I do always like to call out the people that are watching on the less busy platforms. So hello to the two people on Facebook and the 463 that are now watching live. I am seeing the questions and the comments coming on the chat on YouTube, obviously, and all the other platforms, and I'm highlighting a few as we go. But if there's something we haven't covered, we'll answer the questions at the end. Nigel, we'll stick with outgoings. Nigel Horton here is asking about Carlos going to Turkey. How likely is that? He's obviously injured at the moment. I don't know. I always find these things suspicious when there's a heavy rumours linking a player with a move away. Diego Carlos has obviously played a lot of football for Villa this season. I covered this on Sky on Tuesday. He's probably played maybe more football than he would have thought. Probably the same case as last season as well, for someone that Villa have been willing to sell, probably for two summer windows running. I'd have said at the start of the window, I'd be surprised that if he left in January, given how much football he's played. But the suspicious injury, he still posted on Instagram like he normally does, as if he's evolved tonight. Obviously, Emery said he's not going to be and that he's injured. What's going on with Diego Carlos?
Yeah, I think whenever you have a transfer that involves a certain club and a very chatty agent, I think there will always be rumours. I think it is true Fenerbahce made an offer, right? But at the same time, it's, I know there's been a lot of talks that it's advancing. Villa still haven't accepted the offer, and at the moment the current proposal is too low for what they accept. And a couple of reasons is that he's a key player for Villa right now. Like it or not, he'll play a lot of games. And secondly, it's going to add another workload to replace him. I know there was links with Milan Skriniar, but you see his salary. Basically, PSG are trying to offer him out, and how these things work is that PSG or a contact close to the player will try and brief that a lot of clubs are interested to drum up interest in him, and Villa were the club that was linked to him yesterday. But that would add another complication for Diego Carlos, and I do think he'll leave. It's just a matter of when, really, not if. I always thought
not you saying he'll leave in general. Yeah,
I thought it'd be this summer, but if Villa can get what they want price and they can have a replacement lined up, then I think he'll go. And he and his camp have been looking at exit strategies, let's just say, for the last 12 months, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I've seen the Skriniar links as well. I'm not sure how much is in that at all, but you think, like, Villa Villa would, let's say Villa sold Carlos and got him in, different types of centre back for a start. You're then taking on a bigger salary than what Carlos's salary is. I expect, even if PSG pay a portion. I don't think people realised last season how much Longley was on and how much his wages cost Villa. But that was a necessity because obviously Mings was ruled out for the season and they needed cover across the whole season. I think people are reading a little bit too much into Pau Torres being out for 2 months. I don't think Villa will bring in permanent cover for Pau Torres because it's 2 months. If he's out for the season, I've no doubt they try and get a loan in to offset that. But with it being 2 months, I don't think there'll be a replacement as some people are speculating. Did you agree with that?
Probably not on the left side of defence, no. But I think maybe in general there would be. But the way that Villa could keep things, obviously Valencia were a team that wanted Costa and Nedeljkovic. They've now signed Max Aarons. So it's whether the case of you sign a right back who can play centre back. Good example, Menguiza, who Villa really like him because he can play right back, centre back, and left back, and you keep Nedeljkovic, and that meant that Menguiza can be the deputy at centre back, for example. And although he's been shown he's really good at right wing back this in the first 6 months of the season, but I think Villa have always tried to sign a versatile right back and a versatile forward. We can talk about Malen in a minute, but I think adding a centre back, regardless of that versatile right back, would be pretty difficult for Villa. And as we say, PSR is something that they're always keeping an eye on, and something that we'll talk about this month, but we'll talk about especially in the summer as well, and whether Villa will have to sell a big name player again.
I mean, a right back is not a must. Obviously, Nedeljkovic is there at the moment. He's not really trusted either. But I think in an ideal world, if they could sign that right back that can play centre back as well, maybe that would help the Carlos situation. Maybe they would look to sell Carlos then, but they'd need someone who can play centre back and right back to be able to let Carlos go. And to be honest, he's had good games and he's had bad games, Diego Carlos. But for me, he's a pretty valued member of that squad still. I think he's important, and I think if you shift him and get someone else in, Carlos at least he's kind of proven in the Premier League. I think sometimes it's difficult to get a centre back in that doesn't know the league. That was one of the main reasons they got Longley in, because he knew the league from the season before with Spurs. I think that's a huge risk in a defence that's already shipping goals as is.
Yeah, it is a huge risk, but Villa will want someone that's versatile, so if they can get a right back who may not have played in the Premier League, but he can play centre back as well, he can play left back like Oscar Menguiza, then they'll do that as well. It's just the finances. One of the reasons why they have signed Menguiza is the finances and the price that Celta Vigo are asking for is what is the stumbling block. But they've got 3 or 4 other options, so we'll have to see. But Diego Carlos is a player that they will sell, but they want to get a better fee than what Fenerbahce are currently proposing.
I see a lot of people talk about players' ages as well. You do need people that are experienced and 30. You can't just have a squad of 20-somethings. Like, every good team has some experience in there. And Diego Carlos has played a lot of games for a lot of big teams in different leagues. He's an experienced player. So I always think it's funny when people hit 29, 30 and they're written off as too old. Like, you need players like that in your squad. Is there any other news on outgoing? It's probably not worth covering Louis Barry for the sake of this show at the moment. I don't know if there's anything massive going on with him at the moment. He's injured, isn't he, Louis Barry?
He's back in training now, yeah.
Back in training. So, I mean, he's not going to feature tonight because if he plays for Villa, then he won't be able to go anywhere.
I think he'll leave. I just think it's a case of waiting for the highest bidder, basically, and seeing who comes to the table. I don't think Villa are in a rush because they know there's interest there, and there'll be interest there till the deadline. Yeah,
JW, it's a valid point from him in the chase. Milenkovic didn't know the league. Been a brilliant signing for Forest. Completely agree with you. I meant in terms of January when the season's in flow. I always think that's harder to come in when you don't know the league. Alex Moreno kind of proved that wrong as well. There's lots of examples either way, but for me, I just think it's always a risk. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen and players don't come in and hit the ground running straight away from different leagues. That obviously, but to me, in the defensive area where we're already struggling, I think that's a risk. Let's move on to incomings then, Jacob. I'll give Neil, my good friend Neil, my brother from another podcast, Neil Dunworth, and for the love of Paul McGrath Aston Villa podcast. Do go and check out Neil and Paddy's stuff if you haven't checked it out already. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Neil's asking about a player I have never heard of in my life, Jacob. So I'm hoping you've heard of him.
Yeah, I have heard of him, and as we reported on Monday that about Menguiza, Villa are looking at 3 to 4 other options as well. So it's a case of they like him, but keep an eye out on other right backs and alternatives. This is a guy that's been linked for a few days, and he's obviously one of the options as well that Villa are considering. But again, I can only say so much in terms of Villa are still trying to weigh up every single thing in terms of budget constraints, salary. Can he fit? Wesley Franke, for example, is a player that was linked early on in the window. Completely different type of right back, full back profile to Oscar Menguiza and Ratiu in terms of he's far more freewheeling, and other Premier League clubs like him as well. So I think there's a lot of talks going on, and I think there'll be one day maybe the next week, where everything just comes together and the picture becomes clearer. But he's one of, along with Menguiza, Wesley Franke, that Villa are considering.
For football Brexiters who only seem to know about the English league, like myself, can you tell me who he is, please? Who did he play for?
Do you know what? I must admit, I only heard of him yesterday or 2 days ago, and then we've just been looking into him. He's slightly older than what you think. I think he's 25, 26, and he's got a profile that he hasn't got as many assists or goal involvement numbers as Menguiza, but he's a player that I think would fit the bill in terms of his profile and this the finance as well. But they need to decide on a right back first of all and who they want to go for. I don't know if he's as versatile as Menguiza in that respect.
Okay, in haircut news, the last time David Stiles saw him, he had blue hair. We'd have to change that if he came to Villa. You can't be walking around with blue hair in Birmingham if you're playing for Aston Villa Football Club, can you, Jacob?
Wow, Morgan Rogers had the bleached blonde hair, didn't he? So
blonde's okay.
Obviously, with the
blue.
No, I think he might. He can probably go claret, wouldn't he? So that'd be fine. He'd become an immediate hit, wouldn't he? If he went claret and blue, then everyone would love him. But again, it's Monchi casting, isn't it, into the La Liga market really, where his best days have been really. Because if you look at his recruitment over the last, let's say, decade. He was still at his best at Sevilla. He had a poor time at Roma, lukewarm when he returned to Sevilla. But he and Emery are going back to what they know, and hence why Villa have been linked to Juan Foyth as well, for example, former. But he hasn't played for a year, so I don't know how well that would be. But Villarreal and going back to home campus is what they're looking at really.
Yeah, I agree with Adam in the chat. He says, are any of these right backs linked honestly better than Cash? People too desperate for something? No, I would agree with that, but I would also say we need another right back. You can't just keep
you need depth
out there or Bogard, like they're not right backs. So I think Cash is great, but there needs to be another right back at the club. It's simple as that. What's going on with mate? I always doubt myself with his name, Malen. Why can't I get this right? It's so simple. Yeah, I seem to struggle with it, Jacob. But you know who I mean? The Dortmund lad on the wing.
Donyell Malen.
Marlin, why can't his first name confuses me so much that I can't ever get the second name out. I always want to say Malen, like the newsreader Joanne Malen. It's not. She's a local newsreader, so you probably don't know who she is. But his name always throws me. I don't know why. I mean, hopefully we sign not the newsreader. I'd rather sign the Dortmund player. Well,
this is the thing that's been going on for a while. I've broke the story about 9 days ago that Villa were talking to, and it's still the same issue. Personal terms, are not thought to be an issue. They're not an issue. Villa,
I'm surprised now because he's on. I'd imagine he's on fair. I know Dortmund have got a wage structure, but I think he'd still be at the top end of Villa's wages, wouldn't he? And replacing someone like Philogene, who isn't on the top end of the wage scale.
Yeah. Well, we'll write about if and when he signs, but he changed agency in September, and that came following Villa liking him for the previous 2 windows. So they're very close to doing it last January. They wanted him in the summer, but they didn't have the finances for it. So this has been a guy that they've been looking at, a target they've been looking at for a good while, and something that Donyell Malen has been receptive to. So in terms of wage salary, that's probably already been sorted out prior heading into this window, because Villa had obviously had interest in that. But the issue is that everyone, and I assume that Philogene would only leave if just the target of Malen was sorted, and if anything, it's kind of damaged Villa's position in a way, because the story of Philogene leaking meant that Dortmund could hold their asking price, knowing that Villa had more money, and they'll be more emboldened to stick to it, because obviously Villa have suddenly now got this 20 plus 3 million coming in, although it's spread out amortization coming in, and that would strengthen Dortmund's position. So that's not ideal for Villa. But again, I think there's a bit of cat and mouse going on in terms of Dortmund would probably want to sell him, and then they'll get a replacement in, or Villa will pretend or move on to alternatives. That's why we've seen the name Samuel Chukwueze being linked, purely because Villa don't want to come across as too keen and they want to keep their options open.
Do you think this will happen?
Yes.
Do you have a time frame?
I don't. I think it could be one of those, similar to Morgan Rogers this time last year, right? But Villa were linked to him from this time till deadline day, and everyone thought it'd happen. But Middlesbrough stuck to the 15 million asking price, and it only got done on deadline day. And throughout that time, Vidagani, Monchi, they were telling Rogers, "Don't worry, we'll get it done." And I think this is just me thinking this. I've got no information, but I predict that it will get done. I just don't know when.
This is what we want to hear. We want everything now. We don't want to be waiting.
But I think it'll be important, right? If he scores 5 goals, for example, from now to the end of the season, that could be worth a lot of money for Villa in terms of where they finish in the Premier League.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think, look, contradicting what I've just said about people coming into the league and hitting the ground running from a different league, but I do think in a way it's easier in the forward positions than the defensive positions. I don't know why. I think that was just a feeling that I have. He's an upgrade. He can play a couple of different positions. He's an upgrade on Philogene, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But at the same time, he's a different profile. But he can play obviously right wing, left wing, right sided number 10 as well. I think he's a good player. I think he's not lived up to his potential that he showed in the early parts of his career. But he's still a player that I think is great. And I think what's been noted by people close to him and Villa is that if you look at Emery's track record, most forwards he's worked with have always peaked at Emery. So I think he's got a real penchant and propensity to get the best out of his strikers, and I think Marlin's very keen to do that with him.
Jacob using words that I don't understand there. What was that second word?
Propensity.
Never heard that word in my life.
That just came out. Yeah, a tendency then.
Jacob trying to be a football connoisseur here with his own trying to confuse me. What incomings wise, then they're probably the main ones. Is there anything else on the cards or anything else you've heard? Anything you can hint at without going into
I wouldn't be surprised if Villa do a similar deal to Kostin Nedeljkovic, for example, last year, where you sign him in January, then you loan him back to you loan this youngster, whoever it is, back to in the summer, and is seen as a project player, and that's like a Monchi special. If you look at Monchi's track record, he'll do that a lot. They're looking at that guy, the winger, the young lad from Cannes. I can't pronounce his name, so please forgive me. But I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, if that happens, just to supplement this window. It's not going to be headline news, but it'll be some type of guy that will come in the summer for pre-season, and then it'll be Monchi's own project. I mean,
it's a great podcast. We're not covering ourselves in glory here. Words I don't understand, names we can't pronounce, either of us. So it's not a brilliant.
I don't. My biggest
reputation.
issue is I don't want to pronounce a name and then it be completely wrong, and then I'll get some guys on my social media who say, "Do you remember this way?" I've done it before when Southampton signed players, and I tried to pronounce players, and they just got completely wrong, and people texting me about saying that, taking the mick out of me. So I rather just not even try in the first place.
Okay, right. I did pin a few comments for me to go back and look at, so we're just going to rattle through some of these. Mitchell Lowe says, "Is there any truth to Antonio Silva on loan to Bod? Good player in Football Manager, I can tell you that."
Yeah, that was linked at the start of the month, wasn't it? I think he's a good player, but again, similar to Skriniar in terms of salary and the expense of a pay. I think Villa are very tight, so I'd be surprised if that happened, but we'll see. And I Villa want a versatile right back. That's the main priority, so I don't think they'll spend money on him.
Okay. Next up, the Sandman boxing. I think we can debunk this one pretty early. Jacob, is there any legs in Duran to PSG? Please.
All I'll say is, whenever John Duran's about, there will always be speculation because there are a lot of chatty people near him. So there will always be rumours about John Duran, about this not happening.
Okay. Thank you, Sandman boxing, and thank you, Jacob. This one from Gig Sharma. I mean, we tried to put this into the stratosphere, and it's not really worked for us. Guy Walker Peters. There's never been anything has. That was just us idly talking.
So if you brought it up.
But you agree. We had a text conversation. You said that. You know what, Dan? That's a great shout. You said. I'll find the messages.
I said it's a great show, Dan.
I didn't say it was happening.
No interest. But Yeah, he's injured after Southampton's beautiful, brutal 5-0 loss to Brentford. And I think Leicester have been linked to him as well, which would be the most bizarre move.
Really?
But yeah, he'll go in the summer when he's a free agent and Southampton have gone down.
Okay. Andy Tilsley, this is an interesting one. He's asked about Robin Olsen and Copenhagen. I did see some stuff yesterday. I mean, I actually don't expect Robin Olsen to line up tonight. No,
Yeah.
I don't expect that to happen. That's been around for. That's something I've heard all through the season. Actually, at the start in the summer, I didn't say it was going to happen in the summer. I didn't think it was going to happen in the summer, but I've heard about it. Obviously, he's out of contract at the end of the season. For backup keeper, he's actually on fairly hefty wages.
Yeah.
As well, is there anything in that? That was a Johan Langer friend's deal there, wasn't it?
Do you know what I've this morning I've been messaging a few people from Copenhagen and they're very keen to bring him back.
Okay.
But so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that gets done very, very soon. But nothing's been finalised yet, so he's not reported on it. But that is true, and I think it'd be a great deal for him, right? He's got 6 months left on his contract. Villa won't stand in his way. Go back, finish the last couple of years of his career, hopefully starting and playing very well. And despite him being not very good on the pitch, I think he's been some good value off the pitch for Villa. I think he's always been a very good backup keeper, good attitude, trains well, very supportive to him in Martinez. So I think Villa should wish him well, even if he's not being remembered fondly for his on-field performances.
I mean, I've spoken to Cuts about him, I've spoken to Jed Steer about him, and both extremely complimentary. So, you can only treat people as you find him. I've never met Robin Olsen. I've not been massively impressed with what I've seen on the pitch, but people say nice things about him. So I don't think anyone feels any ill towards him. I think it's just generally people have struggled with watching him when he's had to go in goal for Villa in various games, and it's going to be a struggle for any backup keeper because quite simply they're not going to be Emi Martinez, which is a problem. Just on the subject of goalkeepers, Joe Gauchi, you said in the last time we did the show together, it was the first time I'd heard that potentially he might go. Is there anything on that? I mean, we're going to need a goalkeeper.
That was a report from John Townley in the Birmingham Mail in terms of Joe Gauchi, and even though I hadn't heard anything at the time, I would have been surprised because I think it'd be good if he got some first team experience, and I always felt one of the keepers would probably move out, but given that Robin Olsen looks like Copenhagen really wants him, I would have tried. That means for Joe Gauchi would stay, but at the same time, Villa might be quite mean and say, you know what, Joe Gauchi's going to be our long term. Part of our long term, we're going to let him go out on loan, and Robin, you've got to stay until the summer. So it's something to be decided. But I'd imagine that Gauchi, the way things are going, Gauchi would stay, and Robin Olsen would leave permanently. But I think Villa would just need to get this FA Cup game out of the way, really, in terms of the transfer pitch, looking a little bit more clear in terms of departures, because Sil Swinkles is one that will probably be in the squad, might even play tonight. But he's one that Villa wants to move on loan. Wickham, League One clubs are interested in him. Tommy O'Reilly, who's been at Shrewsbury, not been getting a kick recently. I think he might come back. So there'll be a few players that will come back from the loans. I think January 15th is something in a lot of these players' contracts where the parent club have to decide whether they want to recall them or not. So you should expect this. Yeah, next 4 or 5 days, I'd assume we'd hear a lot more about that.
Okay. One from John Griffin here that I think we can probably debunk. Jonathan David. Villa have got Watkins and John Durand. Surely there's nothing in that.
Villa do like him. Like him. Yeah.
Okay, but it's not. Do you think Villa would go there on a free?
I think they go for it. If he was available in the summer, I think they'd definitely go for it. But there's a lot of clubs that like Jonathan David. He's a good player, isn't he? Especially if he's free.
Okay, just want to finish with. I mean, people may have seen his face on the Bosco Balaban comments. Just made me laugh as I was talking. You may have seen his face in the Sun for this show. There was a great article on the Athletic this morning from Oliver Kay about Jack Grealish. There was nothing linking in with us. It was just talking about his struggles at Manchester City, and I thought it was a brilliant read from Ollie. Ollie's one of my favourite writers in the business. Great to do podcasts with as well. When I was at the Athletic, massive fan of him. I'm not saying it's going to happen in January because I don't think it will, but I think it's now looking like probably in the summer there will be a parting of ways. Now, I'm quite biased and I'm quite defensive of Jack. I still speak to his dad. So I'm biased, probably not the best person to talk about it. But from you, who's a bit more neutral, if he was to be available in the summer, do you think it would be something that could happen? I'd be interested to know Unai Emery's thoughts on this. Because there's a space for me. If he was playing that number 10 position for Villa, I think it would be fantastic under Emery. I think he'd be brilliant under Emery.
I think, I'd be purely guessing. I really haven't got a clue, but I think he'd be fantastic off that inside left. I think that'd be perfect for him because he'd have an overlap
in the middle.
No, but he will be drifting central. He'll have that overlapping left back next to him, and he can cut in on off his left. I think I'd be fantastic. And obviously, I'm not an Aston Villa fan, so I don't know the bad blood, but I just feel like he gave a lot of good years for Aston Villa. He then gave Villa a great 3 years PSR. Without the worries of PSR, and that allowed Villa to strengthen very well, especially early on in Emery's tenure, which meant that Villa could build and start their project. I think he's done a lot of good stuff for Villa, and I think it'd be great if he did come back. But I think that will always be speculation about him returning. But I don't know if it would happen, and I don't know if he'd want it to happen. Sadly,
yeah, wages, as Mitchell Lowe said, fee and wages. I'm not sure fee would be a massive issue, but I think potentially wages. He's on huge money at Manchester City. I mean, you've done some great acting over the last 2 years, Jacob, because Adam here just thought you were a Villa fan.
Listen, I
think you are now, aren't you?
Aston Villa are obviously my club in the Premier League, even probably more than Southampton at the moment, given how bad they are. I kind of write them off. But yeah, Villa, I want them to win every game. Even when they play Southampton, I wanted them to win.
Wow, I can't imagine never. I can't do. I wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, Southampton, I've completely gone numb to them. That I don't want to get into it, but the ownership and everything. But Villa, I have that natural affinity. But what I meant is that I didn't grow up an Aston Villa fan. I don't know. I wasn't an Aston Villa fan at the time Jack Grealish left, so it wasn't like I had the bad blood that other people share.
We don't choose, Jacob. We're chosen. That's what we say. in Aston Villa fan. Look, 1,028 people watching us live. I mean, people love a transfer show. If I just put the word transfer in every video title.
All I'll say is let's do a transfer. We should have done a transfer video next week because I think there's a lot of things that are going on that are up in the air.
We will do one next week.
And I think I'll be able to give you a bit more information next week, but my hands are kind of tied at the moment. I don't want to annoy anyone.
Okay, someone's referenced your poker face in the chat already.
I'm glad I've got one.
As soon as we get off this, I'll be asking you what you're going on about anyway. So it's all good for me, but not for everyone else who's watching the show. But we will do a transfer show next week. I think we could probably call it there. 1,043 now, Jacob. Absolutely sensational.
Fantastic.
Live. Thank you ever so much for playing poker with me this morning on the show, Jacob. It's much appreciated. My poker face is nowhere near as good as yours. So well done for remaining coy when you've needed to this morning. And thank you for the information that you have divulged. Be back on Monday with the show, looking back on the West Ham game. And will be a transfer show with Jacob next week as well. So do watch out for that. Thank you for those that have joined us live on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, if you could do that with your post notifications on, I'd really, really appreciate it. So please do that for me. On audio, everyone ignores me every single week, apart from the one person who did actually leave a comment on Spotify. So thank you very much. I saw it and I appreciated it very much. Leave us some comments, give us likes, give us 5-star reviews, write a nice review if you're enjoying the show. All that stuff would be absolutely fantastic. For those of you going to Villa Park tonight, I will see you there. Looking forward to it as always. See what's £1.50, see what's going on at Villa Park. Jacob's skiving, so he's not going to be there. But if you see me, do come and say hello. I always appreciate talking to the people that watch the shows. Have a great rest of your Friday, and stay warm because it is freezing today. And as ever, only one thing left to say: a big, massive up the Villa.